they've got the big house, they've got the children in private school, they've got the fancy cars, and they go, well, I'd love to go and live in Bali for 7 weeks, but that's just not going to be achievable for me. So advice for those that maybe are feeling they want to have a life list, but they do feel a bit stuck.
The first thing I'd say is don't wait for some awful trauma to make you realise that living differently is within your grasp now. My husband was 53 when he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He passed away within 11 months of his diagnosis. He was 54 years old. And his parting gift to me was this realisation, this really profound, brutal realisation that life is too short. I honestly got to the point where there was no sense of self. I was just giving and giving and giving and then giving some more. And enough was enough. It's my turn. Like, it's genuinely my turn. What I'm saying is just make sure that you've got stuff on your life list that nurtures you, that makes you feel amazing.
Kate, welcome to the Career Confidence Podcast. I am so excited to have this conversation with you today. Can you just give us a bit of an introduction into who you are and a bit about your career journey? So, Kate, over to you.
Okay. Well, I am a 5-time author, a best-selling author. I'm an international speaker and coach and consultant, and my specialty, or where I really focus my efforts, is in time management and productivity, in goal setting, and in small business coaching. My background is I worked for many years as a lawyer and absolutely hated it and transitioned into working in operations as a senior executive in big corporate, and got to the point where I had 3 very, very young children, was trying to manage my magnificent career, climb the ladder sort of 20 years ago when it was probably even worse than it is today in terms of work-life balance and trying to be a mum in a professional capacity. And so made the very difficult decision at that point in time to opt out of my brilliant career for want of time. And through that process, I guess I discovered that I did have enough time. I could be doing time differently. And I became very passionate and obsessed around making sure that I maximize my time, but then I shared those lessons with other parents, career women, non-parents, really anybody. I got to the point where I wanted to make sure that everybody has enough time so that you don't feel that you have to opt out of something for want of time.
Okay, that's fascinating. I really want to dive into that because time is the one thing that we all have equal amounts of, and it is how we spend it that leads to success, happiness, fulfillment, all the rest of it. So how were you, when you were sort of in your corporate days, trying to juggle family life and your corporate career? Can we just go into that situation and what was sort of like, what was going wrong in that scenario when you reflect back and how you're running your life? If you could go back in time and maybe coach Kate, what did Kate have wrong about time management and work-life balance at that point?
Kate had everything wrong at that point. Kate was freaking the hell out at that point. I guess the first thing is that I had 3 babies in 3.5 years, and that was just manic. And my babies are now all in their early 20s, and it's still manic. So I guess the first thing I would have said to Kate was, hey, slow down, space it out a little. But the other thing is that it was wonderful because the kids were always best friends and still are. They were all of an age. But when you're in the throes of that, in the thick of that, it's so phenomenally hard. And my partner had a really big, important job, and he was very much less available than me. I had a big, important job, but seemed to be more available or make myself more available. And I also, I guess, wanted to have that control over the the kids space, if you like. So as much as it would be nice to just sort of throw my partner under the bus and say, well, he didn't help, most of it or a lot of it or my fair share of it was because I wanted to control that space. And so in coaching Kate, I guess I would have taken a little bit of pressure off her that you don't have to be it all. You don't have to do it all. You can ask for help. You can pay for help. You can let your standards drop. I would tell her to be more present. You know, I was constantly in this state of hypervigilance and running on adrenaline. I felt guilty about the kids when I was at work. When I was with the kids, I felt guilty about work. I was never able to live in the moment and focus on what I was doing. And I was very, very driven, very, very wound up, and it wasn't sustainable. I think there was also an overlay of the corporate market, or the corporate kind of culture at that time was less forgiving than perhaps it is now. But it certainly hasn't come far enough, in my view. Like, I still see women going through these issues that I went through. So even that isn't an excuse. Ultimately, and I've written about this previously, ultimately I opted out to start my own business because it gave me more control. And women are continuing to do that in droves in Australia. There is a crisis within corporate Australia of very, very talented women leaving and starting their own businesses because they need to create the flexibility for themselves. They've got incredible IP, they're very smart, they're very talented, they're very driven, they're very well connected and networked, and they are leaving corporates to start their own businesses because they need to have more control and more say over their time. And I think ultimately, unless corporates do this very, very differently, what you're going to see is more and more women doing this and writing their own terms. You know, in doing this, and other women who have done this, we get to work the hours we want. We get to choose the clients we want. I get to charge what I'm worth. I have complete and utter control over my time. Why would any woman ever consider going back into a corporate role? So I think that there's a lot broken around this. And I fully advocate for women owning this space and becoming incredible businesswomen.
And everything you just said there, I have got also a live working example of. So my business and my best friend Pam, the reason why we set up See It Solution 6 years ago is for exactly that reason, Kate, because she had come back from maternity leave, but she didn't have any flexibility. She had to work 5 days a week in office, 8:30 till 5:30. There was no flex on when she could start, when she could finish. She was dropping her daughter off at daycare at 7 o'clock in the morning. She wasn't picking her up until 7 o'clock at night. And she asked her employer multiple times, is there any flex? Like, I want to be able to just maybe one night a week be able to get my daughter from daycare a bit earlier. And the answer was no. And I remember like having this conversation with her when we worked together, and it was kind of through that process of watching her, like you just said then, experience the guilt, experience the upset of dropping her daughter off at the daycare, like her, you know, not wanting to leave her 5 days a week. It was so difficult. And that's just one example. And I'm sure there's many, many more. And even now, like you just said then, the system is broken. So look, in your opinion, I'm sure you've got a few ideas. What would have to change? What would actually have to change in corporates? Any ideas on how we can make this better set up for women so we can actually have thriving careers and thriving home lives?
I think there's only one thing that needs to change. And I think that is trust. I think if you trust your staff to do a good job, they're going to do a good job. The only thing that needs to change is I trust you. Just produce the outcomes that I'm employing you to produce. You get to kind of choose your hours and you get to choose the flex. And if you want to work from home, you work from home today or 5 days or 4 days or 8 days a month. We'll come together at particular times, but I trust you to deliver. You're working in that corporate level as a professional. You're very talented. Everyone is driven at that level. You know, you don't climb the corporate ladder unless you have that drive and that ambition and that integrity. So just trust. If employers and corporates just trusted their people to deliver, everything would change. So I think that's the only thing that needs to change, to be honest.
I completely agree. And it's so simple. But for some reason, it just doesn't seem to be happening. And, sadly, like a lot of, in fact, I have this conversation often with my friends. I don't have children, and some of my friends do, some don't. But the ones that don't, they're like, think that, well, if I do have a kid, it's going to set me back, and that there's no support where I work. And it's really sad that this decision is having to be weighed up right now. But it's the reality of a lot of young women that are in the corporate space right now. They think, if I take time off, what does that mean in my career? But then the government are encouraging women to have kids, so it's like, then you've got to support us and set us up for success.
That's it.
Right?
There's everything from being held back in your career to consequences for your superannuation if you're out of your role for a period of time. A lot of people, if they decide they want to have kids, they then don't just have one kid. So you're in and out of your career for a period of, say, 5 years minimum to maybe 10 or 12 years. There's so many barriers. And this isn't just about working women, right? There's lots of people who want to have a side hustle, who want to travel more, who want to not necessarily work, 5 days a week, 8 till 6. It's not just a women issue or a parent issue. It's a flexibility issue, and it's really an efficiency issue. If we set up our businesses, from small right through to really large, with a focus on efficient processes and productivity and making sure our people are productive, and we give them the tools and the training so that they can be productive. We support them with processes and systems and frameworks that are efficient. Then we're giving everybody flexibility, not just working mums.
I completely agree, because I'm somebody that really does value freedom as one on the top of my values list. So I enjoy going off, and we have a van. So we did up a van during COVID. It used to be a bus, so we knocked out all the seats. And in winter, I head up to Queensland for a bit just to get a bit of winter sun. And I couldn't imagine not being able to do that because of a corporation telling me that I had to be in the office 2 days a week. It's like, actually, hang on a minute. Like, I think there's one good thing that came from COVID is now we're sort of a bit more flexible, but now this whole debate about people need to come back into the office. It's crazy. So look, I want to go into your book, Life List, because I think there's going to be so many valuable lessons in that. But you mentioned that you're really passionate about productivity and time management. So what have you done? What do you do differently now to really manage your time and your days? And when you're coaching people to really be the most productive they can be, what does a really good productive or a good sort of time management strategy look like today, as opposed to maybe what it used to look like, which wasn't as efficient?
So I guess there's 3 things that I ensure that I always have in my toolkit and when I'm coaching my clients. And the 3 things are around, firstly, we don't often plan properly or plan to the extent that we need to. We don't have a written 5-year plan. You don't have a written 12-month plan. You haven't broken that down into quarters. And so the first piece is planning, and it's making sure that you actually plan properly. The second piece we need to really concentrate on is control. We need to control our own agenda. Oftentimes, people are just so phenomenally reactive. You may have a plan for the day, and then that plan is completely thrown out within 10 minutes of waking up because you check your phone and everything's I want, I need, where is, can you? And you just lost control of the agenda within 10 minutes of waking up. So the second thing is strategies around control. How do I maximize control over my own agenda? Then the third thing is focus. We need to be able to understand, or we need to have a strategy where we focus on the right tasks at the right time. So when you integrate strategies around planning, control, and focus, you get back control of your time and your life. So I'm moved now into a space where really I work 3 days a week, 3 client-facing days a week. I have my 5-year plan. I have a 12-month plan. And that doesn't mean that there's no space for spontaneity, but I understand exactly what I want to do. I know it. The key things in my life are I plan for them. I have complete control of the agenda. I know exactly when I'm going to work each day. I know what I'm going to work on. I split my day so that I do my high value, hard, impactful, brain draining tasks when I'm at my best. I do my low value, process driven work when I'm at my lowest ebb. I have very, very, very strong boundaries around my time. I say no much more than I say yes. And that gives me complete control. And those three kind of pillars, planning, control, and focus, is what I then teach my clients and how to do it. Time management is not something we're taught. We weren't taught it at school. We're not taught it at university or in our trade. When we get to work, we're not taught time management, and yet it's consistently in the top 2 soft skills that employers seek. It's either number 1 or number 2, sometimes number 3, but it's always up there in terms of what the soft skills are that employers are seeking globally, and yet no one's taught it. So it's a skill we all need, and it's a skill that's easy to learn, but it takes repetition and stickiness. But once you have it and you have back control of your time, you can then create and live any life you want. You've got to start with the time, though. You've got to get the time back so that you can then design and live your best life.
I love that. Such a great way of looking at time management. And I love what you do, like you in the mornings when you're at most, those really like high impact tasks, you just like, that's what you need to get done first. And then when you're sort of lower energy, that's when you sort of do your admin and the things that don't require your full focus. Because I think that was the biggest sort of thing that I realized for myself is it's not just about time management, it's about energy management.
Yeah.
It's like, when am I feeling my best as well? And I know mornings for me are when I'm at my best, and sort of later on in the day, the motivation and the focus sort of like gets lower and lower and lower. So it's just really completely agree with what you just said then. And I was reading your LinkedIn, and I absolutely, you mentioned the word planning there. I think this quote is just so perfect, but you say, many executives and business owners I work with think working exceptionally hard and saving for retirement is what planning for life is all about. They don't realize they can plan for, design, and live their perfect life right now. So I'd love to go on to, obviously this leads me into your book, Life List, but also about that whole planning piece, because one thing that I think a lot of people make mistakes, and I've done this in the past, is not plan for the life that we want. Just sort of like plan, for a week. Oh, I need to get this done. I need to get this done. I need to get this done, but not actually have like a bigger goal in mind. So can we dive into how you actually have gone about planning and designing what your life looks like? And because that's obviously how you've ended up to where you are now. You've written 5 books, you run your own business, you're very successful. So how have you gone about planning your life? So you're not just working the corporate ladder to retire and then one day live the life that you might want to live. So how has all that looked for you?
Yeah, okay. That's a great question. Look, I think ultimately the concept of a life list is the opposite of a bucket list. A bucket list is, what do I want to do before I die? And I don't want to wait that long. I think we need to be asking the life list question, which is, what do I want to do while I'm still young enough to enjoy it and live it and love it? So from that kind of change of perspective, it's then about saying, well, what's most important to me? And again, this becomes a productivity or a time question. Oftentimes when we are trying to consider, what's important to us, we think about it from the perspective of, what are my values? And, you do any self-help program or course or read a book, and oftentimes they'll say, well, what are your values? And I think we're asking the wrong question. I think the question needs to be, what do you most value? And when you understand what it is you most value, i.e., where do you want to be spending your time, then you can plan for or create the life that you want. What do I most value? Well, I most value my kids, my family, my partner. I most value my business, and I most value my health and well-being. And once you know exactly what it is you most value, as opposed to what are your values, you can then start planning for that. So once I sort of front and center realized, well, this is what I most value, I then started to think and create a plan around those things. And here's the rub, I guess, Georgie, is that we often, particularly, the types of people who are going to be listening to your podcast are, successful, driven, high-performing individuals. And often what happens is we get to where we are through opportunities presenting themselves. So we might be in the right place at the right time, or we work really, really hard and someone recognizes us and says, hey, apply for this job. Or we're well connected and we're gregarious and someone says, hey, you would be amazing for this. So these opportunities kind of land in our lap. And that's awesome. And I love that for people. But the question is, imagine how much more you could create and how much bigger your life could be if you actually went out and planned for those opportunities. So you need to understand what it is you most value, what do you want to be doing, and then you create that. And it's a combination of I guess, vision realization and having a vision board or writing down your goals, but then very intentionally chasing after them. And having those goals, breaking them down to within an inch of their lives, mind mapping them out, understanding all the moving parts, locking in deadlines for every single action, putting the deadlines into your calendar. So all the kind of the boring time management stuff, but it's a combination of visualizing what you could have and then intentionally taking very deliberate actions towards achieving those goals. So I wrote my life list. I sat down and I wrote a list of every single thing I want to do, and I'm very systematically working through every single one of them.
That's absolutely incredible. And just as you were speaking then, I was thinking like the times I've had a plan, I've executed on it. The times when I haven't had clarity, life just kind of happens. I'm a bit more reactive. I feel like I'm sort of plodding a bit. Things aren't progressing at the way I want them to progress. But you're so right about a plan. I want to talk more about this life list. And well, I'd love to know what a few things that you've got actually on the life list and how people can go about designing their own. Because I think that's just, everyone should have a life list. We only get this one precious life and hopefully we get to live many, many years. But what's on your life list and how do you go about really sort of prioritizing what should be on there?
Yeah, okay. So I have there's three different types of goals that I think everyone should have on their life list. The first is the go big goals, the big, hairy, audacious goals that take, are multifaceted, that take months or years of planning. So we have to have those. The second is the go small goals. So these are sort of 2 or 3 goals that you set for yourself every single month that fall outside of the go big goals. They're not steps towards the go big goals, and they're not things that you would normally do anyway, but they just continue to fill your cup. And then the third is go now goals, which are the sort of the acts of spontaneity where someone says, hey, let's go, jump out of a plane or whatever it might be. And you say, hell yeah, I'm there. So my life list is made up of all 3 types of goals. The next thing I did is I broke my life, I guess, into 7 chapters, because I think that's the other thing about a bucket list is it's often dedicated to travel and adventure. And I think there's just so much more to our lives than just travel and adventure. And obviously, travel and adventure is amazing, but there's more to my life than just that. So there's these 7 chapters, and it includes lifestyle, health and well-being, wealth, planning for my retirement, what are my superannuations, savings, what investments do I have? There's, a relationship chapter. There's an environment chapter. So there's all these different chapters. So I started off with the go big, the go small, and the go now goals. And then I make sure that every chapter is full, that I have goals that are cut across multiple chapters. So some of the more recent go big goals, 5 years ago, I set myself a goal that when my youngest finished year 12, that I was going to move to Bali for a period of time and live and work there. So that was a long one that was in the planning, and I was there last year for 7 weeks, which was amazing, completely on my own, which I loved. One of my sons and his girlfriends came to visit for a week, and so a go now goal was they said, hey, catch this ferry, meet us on Lombok, on the island of Lombok, and we're going to climb a volcano. And I'm like, okay. So off I went the next day, and we climbed a volcano, and it almost killed me. But that was, incredible. I also recently learned to surf. So when I was in Bali, I went on a surf camp for 7 days because I've always wanted to surf. So I guess those sort of things that bring you joy. And also, I guess there's an element of, I'm 50, I turned 54 last week, of empty nesting and sort of feeling that it's my turn now. I've worked hard forever and ever. I've raised my children. I've been a single mum for a lot of that period of time. My husband passed away after we'd separated, so I'm completely a single mum. And there's an element of, I think you get to an age or a stage where you think it's my turn. I want to live my best life now. And it's great. It's great having that life list. But there's, as I said before, there's things on there that aren't travel and adventure. I walk a lot. I swim every single morning, rain, hail or shine, with my sisters. And that's on my life list. I want to learn how to skateboard next. There's lots of things on there where I want to just systematically tick off these things that really bring me joy. Then there's things on there like I want to vacuum less. I'm going to tell my kids I love them every single day, even when they're shitting me. I want to swear more. I want to eat more lollies. So there's big and small things on there, but it's really just a full list of everything that's going to make me happy.
Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. I wanted to quickly pop in and talk to you about our amazing supporter, CH Talent Solutions. We are an IT and digital recruitment company based in Australia. If you are someone right now looking for a new opportunity or considering a career pivot, please reach out to one of our consultants. Or if you are somebody looking to build your team or build your company or scale, again, please reach out to us if you are looking to find the best tech talent fast. I look forward to connecting with you. Now back to today's episode. Enjoy. I absolutely love this. And I'm just such a big advocate for this, because one book that fundamentally changed my life was The 5 Regrets of the Dying by Bonnie Ware. And I don't know if you've read it, Kate, but she basically was a nurse that basically helped people as they were coming through the last sort of weeks of their life. And there's two regrets that I've always gone, wow, okay. One was I wish I'd lived a life that felt right to me, not what others expected of me. That was the number one regret of the dying. The second was I wish I didn't work so hard. Yeah. And I think that in a society where we put so much weight and status on our job titles, what we do for work, how much money we have in the bank, what our house is like, what our car we drive, what clothes we wear, what you're saying is that's just, I think the older you get, and I'm turning 36, but I feel like I feel like this is I've been here before. I feel like I've got a bit of a wiser head on my shoulder, but I just know that none of that really matters. Like when it comes to our end of our life, it's like, who am I? Have I lived a full life? What have I enjoyed? Have I lived every life and to the best of my ability? Have I had fun? Have I laughed along the way? That's what really matters. But I'm loving everything you're saying. And I totally believe it to be true. But I'm also thinking now, like you said, people listen to this that are very career driven, and maybe they're feeling stuck though, because they've got the big house, they got the children in private school, they've got the fancy cars, and they go, well, I'd love to go and live in Bali for 7 weeks, but that's just not going to be achievable for me. So advice for those that maybe are feeling they want to have a life list, but they do feel a bit stuck. Like where should they begin if they really want to get a plan in place?
Yeah. So I guess two things in response to that. The first is don't wait for a sort of a catastrophic life event to actually help you change your mind. My husband was 53 when he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And from the date of his diagnosis, he had 11 months. He passed away within 11 months of his diagnosis. He was 54 years old. And I guess his parting gift to me was this realization, this really profound, brutal realization that life is too short. And we say it, and everyone says it, and it's such a trite expression. But I think when you go through something like that, and watching my children watch their dad die was horrific. And it's something I would never, ever wish on anybody. And yet that was kind of his parting gift to me, was this realization that life is too short and I wanted to live it very differently. So the first thing I'd say is don't wait for some awful trauma to make you realize that living differently is within your grasp now. The second thing I'd say, and perhaps it's a more practical answer to the question, that's sort of an emotional answer to the question, but a practical answer to the question is, one of the frameworks I take you through in the book is how to sort of position yourself to understand that these goals that we set, these life list goals, don't have to be monumental. They don't have to be the climb the volcano. They don't have to be the climb the mountain. They don't have to be the move to Bali for 7 weeks. But regardless of what the goal is, I take you through a framework that actually helps you realize that you can do it. And one of the initial steps in this framework is, once you set the goal and you say, hey, I want to get in the van and drive up the East Coast for 3 months, or I want to go and climb the mountain, or I want to plant 10,000 trees, whatever the goal is, the very next thing that happens once we set a goal like that, we have a moment of euphoria or a period of this is going to be great. The next thing that occurs is that our brain then starts telling us all the reasons why we can't. Oh, you don't have enough time. How could you take the kids out of school? What's going to happen to your job? Blah, blah. And your brain gives you all these practical reasons as to why you can't. And I say that those reasons, they fall into 2 buckets. There's the fear bucket, and there's the lack bucket. So the fear bucket is, what will people say? What will my boss say? What will my friends say? What will my family say? Who's going to judge me? What if I succeed? What if I fail? The fear bucket. And then the lack bucket is, well, I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I don't have the resources, the know-how, the confidence. What if I feel guilty? So there's these 2 buckets. And what you need to do is you need to actually get all of those out. You've got to get in the boxing ring with them, and you've got to go 12 rounds, and you've got to get them all out on the mat, so you know exactly what it is you fear and what it is you lack, and you've got to write them down so you have a really long list. Then the next step you take is you ask yourself, well, what is it that I most value? And there's 3 questions you ask yourself to understand that, or to help you understand that. The first is, if I was really, really sick, what would I get out of bed for? And you write a long list of the things you'd get out of bed for. The second question is, when I'm with my best friends, what do I love talking about? You write your list. The third question is, when you think of the person that you most admire, whose opinion you value, if they were to compliment you, what would you love them to say about you? You write your list. And then you go through all your answers and you circle it every time it comes up 3 times. And that's going to give you a good sense of what it is you most value. For me, it's my kids and family, my career, and my health and well-being. And when I look at it through that lens, anything that was like a resisting force, the fear or lack, if I balance that up against what I most value, it bulldozes the resisting forces every time. So say, for example, it's I want to drive up the East Coast in a bus with the kids for 6 months. But it's, why can't I? Well, I don't have time, and I'm worried about taking them out of school and they might fall behind, and what's going to happen to my job, and will people judge me, and what the grandparents going to say, and you have all of those. And then you think about, well, what is it you most value? And on there is probably going to be your kids and your family, creating memories and lifetime experiences, freedom and choice. And you look at that and you think, spending those 6 months with my kids in the van, or 3 months or 1 month, it's so much more important to me than what's the school going to think. It's so much more important to me than what are the grandparents going to say. It's so much more important to me than thinking I don't have the time. And you balance what it is that you most value against those resisting forces. What you value is going to win every single time, if you pick the right goal and if it's important enough to you.
That's so profound. And I hope that everyone that just listened to that pauses and goes back and listens to it. If you're driving or you're walking, actually does the exercise, because I think the worst thing you can do in life is set a goal, then you sort of get halfway through or get to the end and realize it wasn't the right goal, and you've just pursued this, you know, whether it's climbing up the corporate ladder or whatever, and you go, oh, actually, this doesn't feel right. So let's just talk, because I've been there and I know what that feels like. If someone's on that path right now where they have set themselves a goal, maybe they haven't done the exercise, they don't really truly understand what they really value, they haven't done the exercise that you just discussed. What are some signs perhaps that, one, they're not in alignment and they're not sort of on the right path towards their goals? And then how can they stop and pause and then maybe turn around or go on a different path? Because I think sometimes when you've invested so much time in something, it's also very hard to then identify, actually, I'm not sure if this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Any advice for that person?
Yeah. So if it doesn't feel right, you're going to have that gut sense. At some point, you're going to go, oh, God, I'm pushing this, and it feels like a chore. Like this, there's no joy in this for me. And I think it goes back to what you said about the book that the nurse wrote. Maybe you're pursuing a goal that someone else wants you to pursue. And so there's nothing wrong with having that reflection and thinking, is this the right goal for me? And also understanding that by pulling out or changing the goal or pivoting in some way, that doesn't mean you haven't succeeded in the goal. Because what you can then do is write a long list, a long list of all the things that you have gained by pursuing that goal. You might not complete that goal, but maybe it's I want to run a marathon, and I'm just going to work so hard. I want to run the marathon because, maybe your partner thinks you should be doing it, or your friends think you should be doing it. And you get halfway through your training program, there's just no joy. And it's like, what the hell am I doing? That doesn't mean you failed, because you look back on it, you think, well, my fitness has improved by 20%. And I managed to buy those beautiful new runners and they make my feet feel great. And I've had so much more sun, and I'm feeling really, really energized. And I've made new friends through the running group. So you might not do the marathon, but you've still have won. There's winnings there for you. So reflect on those. I also think that, we come back to this concept of life is too short. You can't do everything. So if I get partway into a goal and feel like there's a misalignment, I'm just getting out of that. I'm choosing one that's going to give me joy. Because I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time to waste on pursuing that goal that doesn't really feel like my heart's in it. There's no failure. And I talk about this in the book. There is absolutely no failure when it comes to goal setting and writing your life list. Provided you're doing it in a way where you're pursuing goals that are really, really important to you, or you as a partnership, or you as a family. There's no failure, because the act of actually just even trying to articulate what's most important to you means you're winning.
So powerful. And I wish that I had you in my life, or listened to this podcast a few years ago when I was pursuing a goal that, God, every day I was waking up in the end and I was dragging my feet to my desk, and I was just like, I'm so invested in this. This is going to work. And actually I was making myself so miserable in the process. And when I let it go and released it, but you're so right, Kate, had I had that mentality back then of like, but what have I learned? All these lessons, like I can now apply it over here and over here. So it's like nothing's a failure. And I love the marathon example that you use. It's like, when we start running, well, yeah, you've got fitter, and like I said, you've got some comfy new shoes or whatever it is, and you've had some more vitamin D. There's so many more. Again, it's perspective and what we choose to focus on.
It really is. Yeah. And I think there's that analogy often too in, say, small business, where a lot of people that I work with and a lot of my peers in business, it's not until it's their second or third business that becomes really successful. Often, people fail, in inverted commas, in their first business. The first business just doesn't take off. And that was the case for me. It's the case for a lot of people I know. And that's okay. You kind of need that failure to learn the lessons, and you do things differently the next time, or you have better ideas, or you have a broader network, or you have a much better understanding of your consumer clients, you had a better idea of what the product or service looks like and the pricing looks like. But your second or third business would not be the success that it is, but for that experience. So it's not a failure. It's growth. And it's the same with our goals. It's just about growth.
Amen. And it's the whole enjoy the journey, not the destination. And I'd also love to get your thoughts on this as well, because this is something I've been pondering over a bit recently, is that a lot of people that I've had on the podcast have said, detach yourself from the outcome. Don't have these crazy high expectations, because as soon as you have these expectations, and we usually make them so high, maybe we don't meet them, then we kind of like can sort of lack the momentum, lack the motivation, and then it becomes harder to achieve the goal. What's your take on, yes, have an outcome, but don't attach yourself to the outcome? Have you got any views on that? It seems to be coming up a lot in some podcasts I'm listening to right now.
Yeah, okay. I guess my perspective on that is I personally do attach myself to the outcome, and I think it's important because it gives me the drive and the motivation, and it creates the momentum for me. What I would say, though, is don't make the outcome unreachable. And I feel that when we set goals, sometimes we just set them way too high. You know, it's not bloody pole vault. You're not going to succeed just because you've jumped the highest. So I think our outcomes need to be realistic and joyful. And then I'm really comfortable attaching myself to the outcome, because then I feel magnificent when it's done. So I wouldn't be completely, I don't personally advocate for completely detaching yourself from the outcome, because I need something to drive me to the finish line. But the outcome should be realistic, because I want the process to be challenging but joyful. You know, one of the things that I do in my life list is I have life list rules. So what are my rules, or what are your rules for what makes it onto the life list? And that's where you could have a rule which is I'm going to detach myself from the outcomes, but I want the process to be pleasurable, for example. My rules include things like it's got to be challenging. So I want to feel that I've been challenged, or I've challenged myself, and or it's got to be new. So I want it to be something that I've not experienced before, and or it's got to be outside of my comfort zone, which is different to challenging. You know, like you climbing the volcano was really challenging. It wasn't outside my comfort zone. Whereas going speed dating was horrific. And it was well and truly outside my comfort zone. But if you set the rules and you know what makes it onto the list, personally for me, I'm never going to set something, a life list goal that's so challenging that there's a question as to whether or not I can achieve it. I want to achieve the goals. So I'm never going to, whilst I want them to be challenging, I don't want them to be so challenging that it's not going to happen.
No, that's really, really powerful and very helpful for myself. And I think lots of people listening to this, because I think in the past I have set a goal that probably on reflection was totally unrealistic, but I was doing it because I was like, I'm going to push myself to achieve this. And in the process, almost completely burnt myself out, and then probably really challenged myself worse. So I love what you said there, is like, you know, make sure it is achievable, you know, set the outcome and do attach yourself and work towards it and do your best, but don't make it so big and audacious that you're almost setting yourself up to fail.
Exactly.
I think that's really powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, my fourth rule on the list is, you want it to be joyful. I want to enjoy the experience, So I'm never going to have a goal which is jump out of a plane on a parachute, because I just think that's fucking mad. And yes, it would be challenging, and yes, it would be outside of my comfort zone. Yes, it would be new, but there's just simply no joy in that for me. I'm not going to I have to get to the top of Mount Kosciuszko, because I know I wouldn't achieve that. But I might have that I'm going to walk the Annapurna Range, or I'm going to do the Annapurna Circuit, because I think that that's achievable. And I will attach myself to the outcome, because I think we'll imagine the joy. But also it's important to have measures and steps along the way, so that you're celebrating continuously, not just when you cross the finish line. And from that perspective, I agree. It's not the final outcome isn't the moment of celebration. You have to have measures along the way so that you know that you're ticking and completing goals continuously. And then you cross the finish line. That was amazing, awesome, and I've done it. But it's not the only moment that you get to celebrate.
This is so profound. And I'm just sort of like, I love it when podcasts really get me thinking. I'm thinking and speaking at the same time. So I'm just like, everything you're saying is like making so much sense and really like hitting me today. So I think what I'm sort of getting from all of this as well is like, when you do set your goals, ask yourself the question, is this going to bring me joy? Am I going to be happier from achieving this goal, or more fulfilled, or just having is this on my life list? Is this going to be something I look back and go, I'm really happy that I achieved that? And if by understanding your why and really understanding your value, you then will be more joyful along the journey. And then when you get to that end point, you'll go, this was worth it, because you've decided that by achieving that goal, it's also going to make me a happier, more fulfilled person in the process. And that's probably a part I missed out when I was setting goals. I want to achieve this goal because maybe it's going to bring me more money, right? And as we all know, more money doesn't equal more happiness. So I learned that quite early on in my 20s, thank goodness. And now every goal I hit, I go, okay, what does that mean for my life, for my happiness, for my joy, for my fulfillment, for my purpose? So that approach to setting goals and having that as a framework definitely is enabling me to make better decisions and make better goals as well that are actually going to bring me joy. But one section I just want to talk about before we sort of come to the end of the podcast, which I'm conscious of time, but it really stood out to me because this is something that I think a lot of people struggle with. It's in the section 1 about becoming unapologetically selfish. Can you elaborate on this? Because I think this isn't something that as our society encourages us to do, of like, especially women. I think women, we're naturally more nurturing. And I'm not saying like, you give all that up, but what do you mean by unapologetically selfish? What do you mean when you sort of say that? Because I think that's really powerful for a lot of people to hear.
Yeah, look, it's so interesting, Georgie, because when I wrote the book, I wanted the sort of the subtitle to be The Exquisite Joy of Becoming Unapologetically Selfish. And my publisher said, no, oh my God, no, you can't. You can't have the selfish word on the title. No woman is going to pick up that book. We don't want to be thought of as being selfish. We don't want to. And I said, that's crazy. That's rubbish. So I went and did my own sort of straw poll and put it out there to my followers and my clients and got this resounding, you can't use that word. And it really surprised me. So, I didn't use it. But I do talk about it in the book because I think that, if you're a giving type person, and whether you're a woman or a man, I think that, we go through years and years of constantly giving. We give to our friends, we give to our employer, we give to our clients, we give to our partner. And then if we end up having kids, we just, it's never-ending cycle of giving. And I wrote about selfishness in the context of me being a woman in my 50s where I was just sick of giving. And it doesn't mean that I'm not going to continue to give, but I've entered into this stage in my life where I think it's okay to be a little bit less selfless. The definition of selfless is having no sense of self. And I think that if we overly give, or as, in my case, a single mum of 3 children, also working, professionally or in a business, I honestly got to the point where there was no sense of self. I was just giving and giving and giving and then giving some more. And enough was enough. It's my turn. Like, it's genuinely my turn. Now, if anyone wants to label that as selfish, I'm all for it. Call me selfish and I will embrace it because it is my bloody turn. And I really want to get that point across to anyone reading the book. It's okay to focus on yourself a little bit. I'm not saying leave the family, leave your job, go off and just be you. What I'm saying is just make sure that you've got stuff on your life list that nurtures you, that makes you feel amazing. Whether it's going for a walk every morning before you have to get involved with the family stuff, whether it's having a sleep in or a Sunday off, whether it's going out with friends, whether it's swimming with a group of girls, whether, it doesn't have to be the solo trip around the world for 12 months where you up and leave your family and your job. But there does need to be time that's just for you. And I call it selfishness because I want to shock people. I want to give them a little bit of a slap to say, hey, it's okay to stop giving. It's kind of time for us to be a little bit less selfless.
I do completely agree. And I think a lot of people, well, some women that I do speak with myself, this whole not feeling deserving, or like you said, you brought up the word guilt earlier on in the podcast, like feeling guilty for if you say, what do you want? And I sense this resistance from them because they almost don't want to say exactly what they want, because maybe that means that a bit more time for themselves, and but that means more time for my kids. And it's that's okay. That's a good, don't be afraid to say what you want. Everyone is entitled to living a life that feels right for them. And actually, I would also argue that if you spend more time by yourself in solitude doing what you want to do, you can be a better parent, a better partner, or happier human being, right?
Absolutely.
So I encourage people to be unapologetically selfish, 100%.
Yeah. Well, it's true. If you're going to fill your own cup, you will turn up as a better person for everyone around you. Without question. And so, it's actually okay. It's a permission piece. You just have to give yourself permission to do some of this stuff. And, I talked about the resisting forces earlier, and guilt is a huge one. And it's in the fear bucket. What will people think of me? What will I think of myself? Will I be guilty about this? Are people going to judge me for making these decisions? Bugger them. Don't let them rain on your parade. They go rain on their own bloody parade. We have to be a little bit more Teflon-y when it comes to this stuff. We only live once. And I'm certainly not advocating that we, up and leave and go off and do everything completely on our own. But as a woman in her 50s, with my kids being young adults and independent and starting to empty nest and absolutely living their own best lives, I don't need to be here as much and as often, and that's okay.
I absolutely love it, and I hope that everyone is listening to this taking lots and lots of notes. But Kate, what is next for you? I'm sure you're always thinking this, and I'm sure you've got some big, exciting goal. But what are you working on now? What's on the next sort of life list for you? Any big goal that you're working towards right now? I'd love to know.
Yeah. So my every year I have a word of the year, which kind of encapsulates the year that I'm going to have. And it's sort of your true north. If you ever get off track, this word centers me and it brings me back. So my word this year was upgrade, or is upgrade. And the concept being that around this sense of permission, that it's okay to focus on myself. It's okay to upgrade my experiences in life and to start going out and doing things that focus on me in this concept of upgrading my experiences. So I'm off to Europe next week for a month.
How exciting.
I know. I've gone full upgrade with the experience. Yeah. And I'm challenging myself to sort of step away from my kids, step away from that sense of control and having to be the conductor and orchestrating everything and making sure that they're all okay and that I'm here all the time and just in case they need me. And I had this app on my phone where I could see where they are just to make sure they're okay. And I'm just like, what the hell? So I've deleted the app and I'm upgrading my approach. It's exciting. So that's the next thing on my list. Later this year, I'll be doing a little bit more hiking. I'm running group programs for women around the life list and helping them to design their own life lists. And so it's going to be a big year for the life list.
Well, you are walking, talking proof and example of what you write about and what you teach. And I think that's really, really important, because that really inspires people to take action themselves when they see you go off and doing your thing in Europe and you stepping away and you carving out time for you. Then obviously people are going to be like, you can't be what you can't see. So it's like, well, if Kate's doing it and she's living a great life and she's happy and fulfilled, then that gives me sort of almost permission to do the same. So I honor you, Kate. And I think the book that you've written is definitely a needed book, especially in our world right now, where we've got constant things coming at us, telling us who to be and what we should believe in and what kind of job and everything we should be. So I think it's really important that people just take a breath and a pause and actually go, what do I want? What's important to me and what's on my life list? So I loved having you on today, Kate. Thank you so much. And where can I send people to find out more about you? Where do you hang out the most?
I hang out the most on LinkedIn. So probably LinkedIn is the place to come. Just look up Kate Christie. You can also find me on Facebook and Insta. And my website is under my name, but LinkedIn's probably my most frequent channel.
Amazing. We'll pop all those links below. But Kate, thank you so much. And thank you so much for everyone who has listened today. I hope you got a lot from it. I know I have. And I look forward to following your journey through Europe, Kate. So can't wait to see you go through Europe. It's going to be great.
Thanks, Georgie. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you've got this far, that honestly means the world to me and lets me know that you've got a lot of value from today's episode. So if I could just ask you to do one thing, pull out your phone and please leave a quick review. It honestly would mean the world to me. It will help this podcast grow and get our message out there to more people. So if you could do that for me, that would be amazing. And please reach out and just let me know what you want to hear more about, what you're interested in. It will just also help me make sure that I'm continuing to speak to topics that are relevant and also find guests that are real, true experts in what you want to know more about. So have an amazing day. Thank you so much for doing that. And I can't wait to share the next episode with you.